we'll get started. And welcome all of you here this evening. It's nice to have you with us, and appreciate your interest in the county government operations. And if you have a cell phone or a pager, you might want to silence that at this time. And we'll get started. If y'all don't mind, I'll lead us in an invocation, and we'll follow that with the pledge. Mind, Stanford. Dear Lord, we just thank you for another beautiful day. We just thank you for all the privileges and freedoms that we enjoy. We just pray for your continued blessings on our state and nation, and especially on this county. And we just thank you, Lord, for the privilege to serve, and pray that you would just give us guidance and wisdom as we conduct the business of our county, and be with us during this meeting, we pray. In Christ's name, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we're going to call on our clerk of the board, Ms. Olympia Gaines, call the roll forward for the ex officio staff.
I, Olympia Gaines, President and Clerk of the Board of Commissioners of Bulloch County, hereby call the roll for those on the governing body and its officio staff. All those present shall answer by saying aye. Chairman Garrett Neville.
Aye.
Commissioner Walter Gibson.
Present.
Commissioner Ray Mosley.
Aye.
Commissioner Anthony Simmons.
Aye.
County Manager Tom Couch.
Aye.
County Attorney Parliamentarian Jeff Akins.
Aye.
Assistant County Manager Andy Welch.
Aye.
Chief Financial Officer Whitney Richland.
Aye.
Chief Deputy Jerry Akins.
Aye.
Tax Assessor John Scott. Tax Commissioner James Steele.
Aye.
I have determined that we have 4 members of the Board of Commissioners present, therefore we have a quorum to conduct business for the good of the citizens of Bulloch County. I now yield the floor to the chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Each of you have before you a copy of this agenda for this meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Got a motion and a second to approve the general agenda. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Now, the purpose of this meeting today is to have a public hearing on the proposed property tax increase. So I think I need a motion now to open this meeting into the public hearing.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are now open for public hearing, and first we'll call on our county manager, Mr. Couch, if you would, to lead us off in this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to our visitors this evening. Of course, a lot of the folks here, except for the 2 ladies who are present, are either elected officials or part of the county staff. We welcome you, and if you'll allow me to indulge, I'll give explanation as to why we're here tonight. You probably saw a notice in the newspaper referring to a notice of property tax increase. Regrettably, the media that we presented a press release to did not present background information, so hopefully what I have to say will be fulfilling and understanding to you. In 1999, I think, the General Assembly, in a law signed by then Governor Barnes, created the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And among other things, the reasons for that legislation included provisions that were intended to prevent windfall tax assessments, not necessarily windfall tax assessments, but windfall revenues resulting from tax assessments where property values in the marketplace, especially when property values are rising in a more exponential way, it was a means through adjusting the tax rate or the millage rate to try to compensate for any spiraling in inflationary growth. And you ladies in particular, being residents of Bulloch County, I presume, are fully aware that last year we had a real and effective millage rate increase where our general levy increased to 12.34 mils, which, if my memory serves me correct, it was about a 1.9 mil increase. Now, due to the nuances of the law, it requires, and I'm sure Mr. Scott and Tax Commissioner Deal will correct me if I misstate, but anytime there is any growth that's considered to be what the law calls an inflationary level, otherwise meaning that if you collected more revenue as a result of the millage levy at a certain rate, the law kicks in and requires you to advertise it as if it were a tax increase. And what has happened in the past year, really maybe going back the last 2 or 3 years, because we had a very similar set of hearings 2 years ago before we effectively increased the millage rate last year. What we're merely doing tonight, as I have proposed and recommended to the County Commission, is maintaining the existing 12.34 mils. And in the course of this law, because of the additional revenue generated by so-called inflation, and what the inflation really accounts for is some increase in residential property values. We are seeing some recovery from the recession because of that. But part of that inflationary growth also includes assessments on income-producing properties, businesses such as shopping centers, apartment complexes, and those are, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, are assessed in a little bit different way or method than the ordinary way that you would be assessed on your households. Generally speaking, the math is relatively simple. If you have a $100,000 house, you're assessed at 40% of that value, and if you're not including any type of exemption that you have, or whether it's senior citizen, regular homestead exemption, you're basically assessed at the 40% rate, and you multiply that by the millage rate, which if on a $100,000 house, although the average in Bulloch County I think is 125, but for the sake of simple math, you're effectively paying $400 a year in county government taxes. We're not talking about the school board, that's independent of us. So if you have done nothing to improve your property, which would do nothing to kick in an assessment with a higher value, you're going to pay exactly the same level of county taxes as you did in the last tax year. Now, perhaps if you had done something to improve your property, I don't know, put on a deck, an addition, a garage, something like that, and it has been assessed for the higher value, say another $20,000, then it would be $120,000 times 40% times the millage rate. So hopefully in y'all's case, if you have had no improvements on your property and you've not received an assessment notice, I think that would have come out in the spring, indicate that your assessment value has increased. Again, you will pay the same amount of taxes as you did in the last year. Now there are some intervening variables. If you happen to live in a neighborhood with a hot real estate market, that could influence the assessment to some degree, although I believe it would be very minimal. And I'll sort of conclude by putting this in an alternative way. You know, what the Taxpayer Bill of Rights also does, as I briefly stated earlier, it does allow the County Commission the option to do a tax rollback. And because last year when we increased the effective general levy to 12.34 mils, that was based on maintaining 12.34 mils on a 5-year financial plan for the county, because we had, as we said last year, to rebuild reserves in order to help our cash flow and our credit worthiness, but at the same time, we had to meet the increased demand for service, particularly with our public safety units and the courts, sheriff, EMS, clerk of courts, and a couple other areas in the court system. So, unless my math is mistaken, the effective rollback rate, there is an option to reduce it from 12.34 mils, I think, to 12.2 2.286 mils, if that sounds correct. But again, based on my recommendation in adherence to the 5-year plan and knowing that generally a great preponderance or majority of taxpayers will actually not see a tax increase, if we are able to fulfill our 5-year plan and perhaps do so even earlier where we're not having to put $500,000 a year to rebuild our rainy day fund, I think the opportunity could exist, depending upon service demands, that maybe in 2 or 3 years, if the opportunity exists for this type of rollback, it could be more generous. But what we would be rolling back on average, again for, in this case, $125,000 residential home, there's really a distortion in the law that, again, that describes it as a property tax increase, because in this case, to me, it's not inflationary by any measure. I think it's, is it 0.5 or 0.5/100 of a percent? 0.5 of, well, it's a 0.5%, 0.5%. And that's the big difference in the rollback. So I contend that what we're having to do with these 3 hearings, although we're not ignoring the need, trying not to ignore the needs of those and be compassionate toward folks who would appreciate a rollback. In fact, we are not advertising, in my opinion, a bona fide tax increase. And again, if you've done nothing to improve your property or there have been no other intervening variables to increase the assessment on your property, you will pay the same amount of tax as you did last year. And I probably overcooked that one, but I'm out of breath, so I'll yield the floor to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. I think you did an excellent job of explaining that in detail, and sounds pretty clear as to what it's all about. But we will open the floor for any questions or comments at this time. Does anyone have any questions about what's going on here? We welcome input from our
He explained it
citizens.
very well. It's too bad the newspaper made it appear as if this was a hearing for a tax increase.
Well, it's not their fault, because actually, statutorily, that's exactly the way we have to present it. And and of course, as or whenever we do this, it's fully vetted by virtually all the people that you see in the room, and we want to be compliant with state law. And like I said at the beginning, there might have been some good intention, but I recall very vividly when the law was passed. In fact, even though I think I was living in Douglas, Georgia at the time, I remember reading the Savannah Morning News, and at that time in the late 90s, real estate market was really hot, Chatham County, Tybee Island. I even remember a guy I went to church with in Dublin. He retired and moved off to Tybee Island. And he was hot because the value of his house went up from like $500,000 to $650,000 in 1 year, which I began to cry for him. I wish I had a house that expensive. But then again, I see his point. He's retired, his values have gone up 20% and things like that. And like I say, I believe the opportunity may exist down the road, depending upon how our community grows. If we meet our goals, we may have the opportunity to do some form of a rollback. But in my experience here, the commissioners have always been good stewards and good leaders of our community, and their greatest interest is making sure that all the citizens get the services that they deserve at the lowest possible cost.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for the question. Anything else? Okay, let me seize this opportunity to say that our Board of Commissioners, as well as all of our staff and the folks who work for the county, really do not like tax increase. Especially politicians, they certainly don't want to increase taxes, and especially all of us who, that's probably most of us here in this room that own properties, we certainly don't enjoy a tax increase because it affects us too. And so let me assure the public that we will all be very careful to do everything that we can to operate as efficiently as we can to provide the services and the requirements, that are on the county government, to do it as efficiently as possible so that we will keep taxes at a minimum. And we pledge that to you. We'll always work toward that.
We appreciate that.
Okay, is there anything else? Anybody got any questions or comments? If not, then again, we thank you all for being here and thank you for your interest. And I hope this will somehow get to all our citizens so they will fully understand what's going on. Okay, and with that, then do I have a motion to adjourn from this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and now do we have any comments from our commissioners? Anyone have anything else to add? The board?
Thank you, ladies, for coming.
I guess I want to add on what the chairman said, when we do stuff like this and people, citizens come up to me and say, well, you raising my taxes. I said, well, I don't get a free pass. I don't like it no more than you, but, we try to take care of all our citizens, the way that they want to be taken care of. And we do our best. We got John and James back there, hard workers. Our staff really works hard to keep us informed so we can make the best decisions on these things like this. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
I'll just echo what's been said. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Thank you, staff, and especially James and John. I have to say this, it's wonderful going to different things at ACCG and to hear wonderful comments about our staff. And Mr. Scott and Mr. Dale certainly get high accolades for the job they do. And I know if they wasn't attached to Bulloch County, there would perhaps be some people out there waving to try to get them moved, but I believe they're Bulloch Countyans for life, so we appreciate the job that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Scott?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Scott and Mr. Deal and their offices too. I can certainly attest that in my experience here, Mr. Scott and his staff assesses the values very fairly and to the letter of the law. And when they're called to make discretion or to work with not the Board of Appeals, but the Board of Equalization, the members on those boards and the Board of Assessors are equally compassionate, but again, they follow the law of uniformity. And Mr. Deal and his staff, they are going to get your money, but thanks to Mr. Deal's notion of fairness, he's going to get it from everybody else too. So nobody gets a free ride. But at the same token, he and his staff do it with a good spirit and the same understanding as Mr. Scott's office does. So we owe them great thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any staff comments? Okay, again, thanks to all of you for being here, and we will call for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.